This Easter, skip the ordinary and whip up something golden with melty, creamy Velveeta cheese. From scalloped potatoes to rich mac and cheese, Velveeta turns every bite into a crowd-pleasing celebration, bringing the extra to the ordinary, transforming simple sides into lip-smacking, satisfying moments. So go on, make it melt, make it craveable, make it indulgent. Velveeta, respect the drip. Visit Velveeta.com/Easter for some recipe inspiration.
Pros, just because something on the job runs out doesn't mean you have to. Order it on the Lowe's app. My Lowe's Pro Rewards members get free same-day delivery on eligible orders over $25. Get the fasteners, hardware, or tools you need to keep the job moving. Order by 2 p.m. and get eligible in-stock items delivered right to your job site by 8 p.m. Members get more at Lowe's. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Subject to availability. Restrictions and terms at lowes.com/shipping terms. Subject to change.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. If you're wondering why I'm laughing, it's well, you'll have to listen to the last pod we did, because we're recording this questions pod straight off the back of the last news pod, the end of which involved Kieran I can only use the phrase bitch slapping Barry Glendinning, which just made me laugh very much. It's just over a picture of Sophie Ellis Bextor, which is
I'm being buried with that photo.
Well, you know what Barry Glendinning's like, I'll tell you. Once he hears that. How are you, Kieran? Apart from still chuffed about your picture with Sophie Ellis Bextor.
I'm very good, very good. Yes, it's quite nice to have a couple of weeks off football. And I'd just like to thank both the Premier League and the Football Association for arranging this break when they have done, because the vast majority of football clubs have their financial year ends on the 30th of June 2025, and that means that their accounts have to be submitted by the 31st of March, which means that now I can spend the whole weekend updating my spreadsheets and not have to worry about going to a match in the middle of it. So I won't have torn loyalties.
Well, you see, that's why Sophie Ellis Bextor looked happier in the photograph than the Baroness does sometimes. Basically, it's just not. I have to say, there's nothing better than a couple of weeks break when your team has just won the last game before that break. I'm sure Newcastle fans and Arsenal fans are not as happy about the break coming up. But
there's always positives. I mean, if I was a Spurs fan, I would be saying 3 weeks without a defeat is possibly the longest period of the season without a loss, and take that as a positive and celebrate.
Yeah, that's going to be a. I'm pausing as I'll drop my pen. It's very unlike me. It's normally clamped between my teeth. We've done some specials in our time recently, Kieran, but if Spurs do get relegated, that's going to be a big special. We are going to do at some stage a sort of 40-minute deep dive into the new squad cost rules that are coming in, because we're already having a lot of questions about those. We're expecting a lot of questions about how to get round those. And I've already been baffled by a couple of conversations. So if anybody needs a refresher, it's me, Kieran. But it's questions day, and our first question comes from an old friend of the show, Nick Andrews Govain, who I think has learnt the knack of sending questions in bulk about 18 months ahead, and we end up asking one a week. But Nick Andrews Govain has this question. He says, following up on your chat recently about Nottingham Forest establishing a netball team, why are British clubs not multi-sports clubs similar to Europe teams? Surely this is a good way to generate revenue all year round and increase the visibility of the brand. Now, strangely enough, Kieran, we recorded just a few days our bonus questions pod for Price of Football Club members, and we had a question about the Bristol Sport Group, which is, I think, probably the only club in Europe, in England, that has that sort of European model, because most clubs abroad, like Barcelona, for example, they have a volleyball team, a handball team, a futsal team. So it's a very common model on the continent, but it's not something we've ever really been involved with here. But as Nick says, surely it's a great way to generate revenue and increase the visibility of the brand.
I agree entirely with you in theory, Nick, but we now have the problem with football in this country. There is too much football in this country. We are obsessed with football, and that has squeezed out interest of all other sports. And as a result, it's very, very difficult to gain traction, to gain attention for other sports. I remember going to Poland, and I went along to see an indoor volleyball match, and first of all, it was sold out, and secondly, the ferocity of the crowd was absolutely spectacular. And what we don't realise is, because I'm just as guilty, I assume that every country in Europe is exactly the same as the UK, in the sense that surely we just wake up and talk about football until we fall asleep later at night. And that's not the case, and therefore other sports do have significant followings and significant interests, and therefore the parent club. And look, let's be honest, Barcelona Football Club is by far the dominant element of FC Barcelona, or of Barcelona as a sporting institution. And tends to be the case as well. But I think that there have been attempts to sort of co-badge. We've seen esports clubs set up, where sort of nominally linked to a Premier League football club, and there is an audience for that. But again, I couldn't tell you what that audience is, because I myself have fallen into the trap, and I like esports, but I spend so much time focusing on football that I don't give these other opportunities a chance to grow. So yes, it should work, Nick, but the problem is we have the Premier League in particular has become the cuckoo in the nest when it comes to our interest in the broader sports world. Now, it's great to see some sports finding a way around that and creating a new product and environment. Darts, I think, has been a spectacular success in recent years, for example. But that takes place at a different time. That takes place in a different environment. I can't see Luke Littler. He's a big Manchester United fan by all accounts, but I can't see him taking up a Manchester United themed darts team to have some sort of league of darts.
I think it's worth reminding ourselves of a couple of the things we said on the members pod, Kieran, because obviously we have a lot more people listening to this than we do to that. For the moment, that figure will change as more and more people become members. But as I told you a couple of days ago, I've been researching football in the 50s and the effect it had on other sports. Back in the 50s and into the 60s, greyhound racing would have 30,000 people at Walthamstow and Wimbledon. Boxing, old-fashioned wrestling, they would sell out. Speedway would sell out. Cricket, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of a county game at the Oval would sell out. They were huge sports. And then certainly once the Premier League got rolling, all these things were pushed aside by football. So football in this country has essentially wiped out other sports as spectator activities, and indeed it's wiped out their broadcasting deals as well. But just a second point to me, when it's something like the Bristol Sports Group, you would imagine that most of the money goes to the football club first. And you imagine in Barcelona as well, with the financial problems they have. But do they have, when these groups are set up, do they have rules and regulations about how much money is distributed? Because otherwise you'd think it would be very easy for the basketball team or the volleyball team or the rugby team to be sort of squeezed out.
No, there are no rules. It comes normally down to the benevolence of the owner and how much they are willing to subsidise these other sports clubs, because they don't make money. And in the case of Bristol. You've got in Steve Lansdowne a very proud Bristolian who is willing to have both the football club and the rugby club lose an awful lot of money. But I agree with you entirely. Sort of football has become the grey squirrel of modern day sport.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy. I'm going to use that and pretend it was mine. Simon Pugh as our next question, and I think this is a fascinating question, Kieran. It's almost a pity that PSR is disappearing because we're still getting questions about it even now, and I think this is one of those questions that I love, which is almost slightly obvious, and I can't believe I haven't thought of it before. Well, I can because my brain's not wired that way. But Simon Pugh says my question is around PSR and why club debt is not factored in. Surely, if it was to do as it says on the tin, having a club that is constantly servicing a substantial debt is neither profitable or sustainable. For example, Manchester United is rumoured to be multiple hundreds of millions in debt, yet is still able under PSR rules to lose £105 million more over 3 years, whereas other clubs that have no debt are restricted to the same level. Surely PSR rules should only be based on a loss from a debt-free level. Now, that makes perfect sense to me, Kieran, I have to say.
Yes, and it should be noted that under the SCR rules, you are effectively going to be assessed on a debt-free level, and this is why clubs such as Manchester United are so keen to switch from PSR. As far as PSR is concerned, though, it is the interest on the debt that goes into your PSR calculation. Now, based on my calculations, Manchester United I think it was in December, they went through the £1 billion of interest barrier since the club was acquired by the leveraged buyout from the Glazer family, and that has had an impact, not a huge impact, but has had an impact upon the ability of the club to sign players on occasions. It is still Manchester United. It's still this magnificent brand, which is alluring to, it attracts players by its own right. But it has put the brakes on, especially in the early years of the Glazer ownership, when the interest charge was close to £100 million in some individual seasons. And had it not been for the genius of Sir Alex Ferguson, I think Manchester United could have found life far more difficult than they did. But his ability to motivate and develop players sort of counterbalanced the challenging position that Manchester United was put into by the ownership.
I'm sorry, Kieran. I'm just going to check I haven't misunderstood something you said. Did you say that Man United are happy about the new squad cost rules, even though they are going to be based on a debt-free level?
Yes, because under PSR, Manchester United probably paying £20-30 million a year in interest. Well, that went into their PSR calculations, but under the squad cost ratio, it is only player costs. So therefore, that interest expense is excluded. So I would be absolutely delighted if I was Manchester United with the transition to SCR.
So based on what Simon is saying, then correctly, these new rules encourage debt. Then
they do, yes. And I've always argued that debt in its own right is not a concern. It is, as Simon rightly says here, it's servicing debt that is a potential issue. But what happens if the debt, for example, comes from the owner and is interest free? That's the benefit that Chelsea had with their relationship with Roman Abramovich, and that eventually resulted in Manchester City challenging the legitimacy of some of the Premier League rules in terms of associated party transactions, which City are very, very pleased with the outcome, and the Premier League are claiming that they are pleased with the outcome of that particular case, even though they've got nothing to be particularly happy about.
It does seem, I have to say, Kieran, and I know you've said this a lot, but it does seem counterintuitive when we say that debt isn't, because it must come a stage when debt isn't a bad thing, isn't a good thing, rather. That debt becomes worrying, that because sometimes servicing that debt is easier said than done, isn't it?
It is. I think if you borrow for the right reasons, if you are taking out a long term loan to pay for your weekly groceries, you've got a problem because you're getting nothing back from it, and that was the issue as far as the leverage buyout by the Glazer family of Manchester United is concerned, because Manchester United got no benefit apart from an interest charge. If you contrast that with Spurs, the issue with Spurs is that Spurs borrowed over £800 million from banks, but they got this brand new stadium, and because they negotiated a very low interest rate, I think its average is around about 3.6%. Spurs are paying interest of 27, 28 million a year, but their match day revenue is up by £90 million a year. Their commercial revenue is up by £100 million a year. So if you borrow and you put that into something which generates a huge amount of money, then that can be beneficial. I mean, one of the things which I'm a little bit concerned about with Spurs, and again, we've got nothing to say that this is a certainty or even a probability. Is there a clause in the Spurs loan which says, should the club be relegated, that means that's a break in the loan, and either has to be renegotiated at a far higher rate or allows the lender to say, we now want our money back. And then the Spurs have to try to negotiate with a fresh lender. I mean, certainly if I was a lender, I would have put in such a clause. But it could be that the people lending the money, they don't understand football. We remember famously the Blackburn Rovers when the Venke family when they acquired Blackburn Rovers, they weren't aware of a thing called relegation, and also the financial consequences of relegation. So banks can be as dumb as that.
I suppose it also seems counterintuitive as well for a bank to look at a club being relegated and therefore losing income, asking them to then pay more interest on the loan.
Well, banks do what's best for banks.
Yeah, no.
They have got no moral or ethical compass whatsoever as lenders. They are there to assess risk, and if there's an opportunity to renegotiate at a higher rate, I can assure you that's what their bonuses are based on.
I like the idea there might be some nice people listening to this who work for banks, hearing you say they have no moral or ethical compass and spitting their breakfast champagne out, going, "What? We haven't got what?"
Well, as institutions, they haven't. As individuals, there are many fantastic bankers. I can assure you, who do an awful lot of good. But
some dodgy ones.
Some dodgy ones, absolutely.
Yeah. I suppose it's the same with all debt. It depends who you've got the debt with, isn't it? There's a big difference between having the debt with Lloyds and having it with Uncle Terry.
Yes. Uncle Terry was very persuasive, though.
Oh, I know it was. Yeah, as the amount of people walking without kneecaps around South East London would indicate. Our next question comes from Eric Schmidt. It's one of those questions, Kieran. You go, this is a classic pub question, but it's a really good question, I think. As Eric Schmidt says, is it possible for the Premier League to run out of money? Well, with parachute payments, prize money payouts, and ever-increasing litigation costs, is it theoretical for the PL to ever run out of money? My guess would be, Kieran, if the broadcasting deal went south, then the answer would be yes, would it?
You're absolutely right, Kevin. And we've seen that in France. Because the French football authorities fell out with the broadcasters, claiming that the broadcasters are saying not enough is being done to prevent piracy, and therefore viewing figures are far lower than anticipated. And that's an ongoing challenge for Sky and TNT, by the way. But could it happen in the Premier League? Now, it has happened to a very slight extent in season 24-25, because we have become used to every season the money distributed by the Premier League to the 20-member clubs and to those clubs who are in receipts of parachute. That has gone up season after season after season. Now, I appreciate there was complications with COVID, but I think we can set that aside. But in 24-25, less money was distributed to the 20 clubs. And why was this? It was because the increased litigation costs were so high that they absorbed the money coming in. If you think about it, the way that it works is at the top of the funnel, you've got the money from the broadcast deals domestically, the money from the broadcast deals internationally, and the Premier League's own sponsors. Then the Premier League takes out its running costs, and then they split that, whatever's left over, between the 20 clubs. Well, such is the increase in legal costs, such is the increase in lobbying costs in recent years, that the amount of money left over for the 20 clubs actually declined in season 24-25. And this is why, when I've had sort of discreet conversations with a couple of clubs who say, we really do not give a monkeys about the Manchester City verdict. All we see is that particular consequence of the Premier League spending so much money on legal costs that it means that there's less money for our budget, and we want to go out and sign players, we want to keep our fans happy, we want to keep season ticket prices to a minimum in terms of increases, and we're not able to do that because what appears to some to be a sort of a vanity exercise by one or two individuals who've got it in for Manchester City.
You didn't start a business just to keep the lights on. You're here to sell more today than yesterday. You're here to win. Lucky for you, Shopify built the best converting checkout on the planet. Like the just one tapping, ridiculously fast acting, sky-high sales stacking, champion of checkouts. That's the good stuff right there. So if your business is in it to win it, win with Shopify. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/win.
Get in the game with the college-branded Venmo debit card. Rep your team with every tap and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash, a new rewards program from Venmo. No monthly fee, no minimum balance, just school pride and spending power. Get in the game and sign up for the Venmo debit card at venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
Our next question, Kieran, comes from David Ely, and it indicates that there are a lot of people out there like me who still haven't got a full handle on parachute payments and whether they are good or bad. And David Ely's question is this. During a discussion about the regulator on a recent pod, Kieran said that he was in favour of parachute payments as it enabled clubs to offer 3 to 4 year contracts when they were promoted. The argument is that they would be protected if they were then relegated. As I understand it, though, most clubs would have relegation clauses in contracts that would reduce significantly player wages in that event. Given that, then surely the size of the parachute payments are unnecessary.
Yep, I absolutely understand where you're coming from, David. For me, this is an issue of scale. I spoke to a chief executive of a former Premier League club, and he said, especially when it got to January, if you're trying to persuade a player to come from Portugal or from Belgium or from France or wherever it's going to be, and you're offering them a contract, if you say to them, it's now the third week of January, we have got 16 games left this season, we will offer you £50,000 a week, plus we'll give you a £500,000 bonus if we stay up as well. But if we are relegated, and this is where if you do something, if you abolish parachute payments, that player would have to take an 80% pay cut, and the player says no.
Yeah,
even if he's Spanish. So therefore, as the chief executive says to me, it means that we can't compete because those clubs that have been there for a few years already have bigger budgets, and the sort of the yo-yo element within football between the Premier League and the Championship in terms of promotion and relegation, that would be amplified from where it is now. So if you have parachute payments, you can go to that same player and you can say, tell you what, we're going to give you a 25 or 30% pay cut, and the players' representatives will say, well, okay, we've got 50 grand for 16 matches. 25% reduction in that takes us, to 37. That's still pretty decent, and we've still got 3 years on that. And they say, yeah, okay, we're willing to do that. Now the chances are that player will go either at the end of the season or the following season because they won't necessarily be wanting to play in the Championship. But from a financial point of view, parachute payments increase the attraction of the Premier League, and the Premier League's argument has always been, we do put an awful lot of money, we do recycle an awful lot of money into the EFL, and part of that is due to the fact that we've got 20 clubs in at one point, of whom, let's be honest, 6 are huge attractions. we've probably got 4 or 5 who are medium-sized attractions, and that means that the global audience will tune in to watch so many of these clubs, which allows us to generate more money, which allows us to recycle money to the EFL. But parachute payments, I'm not. It's a classic case of the least worst option. If you abolish them altogether, as has been suggested by some, it certainly increases A, the chances of clubs going into administration following relegation, and B, clubs struggling to sign decent players and therefore effectively condemning themselves to relegation before they've kicked a ball at the start of the season.
I presume, Kieran, that with the new squad costs rules coming in, that won't affect parachute payments in any way, shape or form, will it?
No, because the broader issue is that you've still signed that player on a 3 or 4 year contract, and that player will still have a 25 to 30% relegation clause in their contract, which you cannot afford to pay out on a £12 million a year EFL TV deal in the Championship.
And are the squad cost rules only applicable to the Premier League?
Yes, they are at present, and I think the reason for this, and I absolutely understand the EFL's position, is that they don't want to go down that route themselves, because that would give an even bigger advantage to clubs in receipt of parachute payments, because the parachute payment in the first season is 45 million. If you've got a Championship club that's getting 12 million, can you see that 85% of 12 million is approximately 10. 85% of 45 million is 38. That would allow that club that's just been relegated to have that advantage in terms of wages. So the EFL clubs don't want to go down that route, or if they do, they would say that parachute payments would have to be excluded from revenue. But that would just the number of sort of self-repeating calculations and issues that would cause even the most nerdy of accountants, I think, would be struggling with it.
It's interesting as well, though, Kieran, as well, that the opponents of parachute payments have often said in the past, well, it makes it virtually impossible for teams in the bottom 10, if you like, of the Championship to go for promotion, because they're always competing against teams that have parachute payments. And yet, if you look at I can't remember the top 6 off the top of my head, but the top, certainly Coventry, Middlesbrough, Millwall, it would be a long time since any of those teams got anywhere near parachute payments, and yet they look like 3 teams who could go up. So that argument has gone out the window slightly this season, hasn't it?
It has, and I think what is intriguing about this season is that we've only got 4 clubs in the Championship with parachute payments, and I was talking to somebody connected to a Championship club at the start of last summer, and he was, we were having a general chat, and I was saying, look, I've got no idea what your budget is, but if you were going to go all in, I would definitely go all in this season, because Luton are in receipt of parachute payments, but they've dropped down into League One. 2 of the clubs, I think Burnley and Leeds, bounced straight back, so therefore they're not in receipt of parachutes themselves. They're actually in the Premier League. So it only left Leicester, Southampton, Ipswich, and Sheffield United in receipt of parachutes. Leicester have got ongoing issues. Sheffield United sort of having good and bad bits to deal with themselves. So it actually meant this was probably the most open Championship, I think, for many years from a financial point of view, and he said, "Blimey, I'd not thought of that," and he bought me a second sausage roll.
You're a cheap date, aren't you?
I'm a very I once advised a former somebody who was originally connected to football about her share options, and I devised a share option plan for her to put to her employer because she felt she was being shortchanged. And then sort of 6 months later, she said, and she bought me a pizza as a thank you. And 6 months later, she came out. She was in absolutely foul mood. And said, "Oh, we've just been taken over. So that share option scheme that you put together, it's now a waste of space." And I said, "Did you check the small print?" And she said, "No." She said, "Well, yeah. If you check the small print, when you're taken over, your options convert into shares. And then the phone went very silent, and she said, "I've just made £6 million."
I hope you got another pizza.
Well, I did, and I ordered extra pepperoni to put it. I thought if you're paying, but
You stick it to the man.
Yeah, that's right.
I like to think that Sophie Ellis-Bextor will be looking through her photos from the Carabao Cup final, just going, I don't know who that is. I don't know. And somebody will go, "That's Kieran Maguire. Did you ask him about your royalties and how you could double your pay?" He's going, "What? I missed the opportunity." We'll be getting an email from her soon, Kieran. I'm sure she'll find a way of tracking us down. Our last question comes from Barry Davis, and Barry says, I can't say that name without evoking.
I know. I'm exactly the same.
This is incredible, isn't it? Barry Davis says, "Look at his face. Just look at his face." Amongst many other brilliant things, Barry Davis said, "What are the top trends," says Barry Davis, "for Premier League teams to substantially increase overall revenue, and how does this vary between the top, middle and bottom teams? Are some clubs much better at this than others, and are there any low-cost, high-return actions that clubs should ideally be progressing?"
Right, but this is a marketing issue rather than a financial. But certainly, as far as what we refer to as the top clubs, I think they are trying to extend their brand. They are using new types of partnership. So we've seen, for example, Manchester United have sort of partnered with the Stone Roses to put out a range of merchandise with Adidas as well, and it's absolutely brilliant. And anybody that was that got the first Stone Roses album, and I got all the EPs, and I remember the Roses. I'm not going to give it the I remember them before they got big, but they were like many Manchester bands, bands like the Chameleons and so on, and they were, everybody had seen the Stone Roses, and a lot of the time they were crap. I'll be honest, but when they hit that imperial phase, when they just knocked out those EPs and so on, and John Squire's sort of EP covers and album covers, well, that's been utilised by Manchester United superbly well. Manchester City have done the same with Oasis in terms of merchandise. So I think what clubs are trying to do is to sort of embrace culture, especially local culture, and there is a huge crossover between other parts of the entertainment industry and football, and I think the bigger clubs that tend to have the global followings have done this, and this can be done for other clubs as well. Certainly Ipswich and Ed Sheeran have been fantastically successful in that. As far as the middle and the bottom teams are concerned, I think it's often a case of trying to make hay whilst the sun shines. You might have a particular issue. So you might have a player from Korea or Japan or somewhere who has joined your club, and then you put out a range of merchandise that would appeal in terms of what works in those particular markets. But it does involve investing, because these things can go spectacularly wrong as well. But these are the types of things that clubs are doing. And I think it does. It comes down to have you got a sort of a particularly visionary person in terms of marketing the club who is willing to embrace new ideas and take it from there.
I can't tell you the amount of times I've tried to persuade Steve Parish to do a joint Crystal Palace Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine branding exercise. A half and half scarf with Palace on one end and Carter on the other. They would fly out of the shops, Kieran. I suppose the obvious answer for this is that it's the overseas market, full stop, for a lot of Premier League teams. Even clubs like Brighton and Palace and Brentford, there are only so many Brighton, Brentford and Palace fans to go around in England, really. So you look for a way of exploiting. I'm not saying clubs have reached a stage where they're only buying players to open new markets, but I'm sure it's crossing their mind occasionally. Brighton in particular have got a wide range of exotic locations from which they source players, which is very good. But there's still we've talked before, the Premier League is just huge. We sometimes forget that. For the amount of money that's involved in it's almost a cottage industry in England compared to how much money you can make overseas. It's just finding a way of tapping into that market, isn't it?
That's right, and I can assure you that there are meetings taking place in every club every week. What can we do to to extend the brand, because football is a daft industry. We've said on many occasions, you generate money 25 days a year.
Yeah. Carter, the Unstoppable Sex Machine. That's the answer, Steve Parrish, if you're listening.
Or an iLudicrous. iLudicrous flexi disc.
I'd forgotten them. You mentioned them the other day, didn't you? So, yeah. There are other bigger musicians involved, but they...
My day kicks off with a refreshing Celsius energy drink, then straight to the gym. Pre-K pickup, back home to meal prep. Time for my fire station shift. One more Celsius, gotta keep the lights on. When the 3-alarm hits, I'm ready. Celsius. Live, fit, go. Grab a cold, refreshing Celsius at your local retailer or locate now at Celsius.com.
It's not just something you made. It's the privilege that you get to work with your hands. It's building something that serves a purpose. Proof that you have the grit to keep going. At Timberland, we understand you take your craft seriously, and we do too, which is why our products are built to the highest quality. We put in the work so you can perfect yours, with purpose in every detail and crafted with intention. Timberland, built on craft. Visit Timberland.com to shop.
Thanks to everyone who's joined the Price of Football Club. If you'd like to join the club too and get every episode a day earlier than everyone else, ad-free listening and invite to our monthly Q&A sessions, bonus episodes and more, then go to our website, priceoffootball.com. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter, you can find us on YouTube, and if you'd like to buy one of our books, you can find all the details on our website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Thursday with our regular news pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you as always for keeping in touch with us and keeping us on our toes as well. I'm very forcefully reminded to me of my shortcomings on social media when I get something wrong, and that is the way that it should be. We try to maintain high standards as possible. There's a variety of ways you can support the show. One of which is to give us a review. It does help us in the charts. It helps producer Guy as far as making bookings are concerned. It doesn't matter what you say in the review. You could even say you would rather have it produced by Steve Dale and Dick Dastardly, and I'm trying to work out which of the two is the most evil there, but I'm not sure I'd listen. I don't think I'd care that much. From Cell 104, by the way, of West Wing.
Dick Dastardly hasn't got a lot to say for himself, has he, really? Just a little twirl his moustache. He was always more of a pantomime villain for me, Dick Dastardly, wasn't he, really? I think at heart, he wasn't. I think he didn't enjoy what he did to those people, to be perfectly honest. Muttley, Muttley he was the real wrong un. No two ways about it. And on that bombshell, bye everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.
There's fishing, and then there's fishing. Out here, you're after dinner. Online, hackers are after your data. They'll bait you with fake emails, lookalike sites, anything to lure you in. But with Cisco Duo's end-to-end phishing-resistant access control, every login, every device, every user stays protected. Looks like no one's biting today. Cisco Duo. Phishing season is over. Learn more at duo.com.